Welcome back. Listen, if last week was a quiet one, the week before, sorry, then this past week and what's going on right now, I feel like everything's popping off right now. Everything's sort of popping off. Things are going on in all different types of sports that I'm not actually, I wasn't following before. So I've got definitely another video planned this week, just because in the athletics. Ever since you start realising the Olympics are coming up, I start thinking, okay, let's have a look, see what's going on in the athletics. World records going every other day. People are getting close to world records that I didn't think they were actually going to break. So, got a whole new video for that, because this video would just be simply too long if I chucked all that in there as well. And we've got enough to talk about today. Jump straight in. No playing games. Formula One. Now, Formula One. So last week, it was a procession. And this year they haven't happened too often, obviously, because it's actually a title battle. But we're slowly edging towards what we've had for the past 7 years. Now, there's a narrative in Formula One at the minute, or it's been going on forever. It kind of started from the Schumacher days, obviously. When Schumacher was dominating, people want change. So they got change. They had Alonso for a couple of years. And then there was kind of a couple of years where it was sort of nobody really claimed it. And then Red Bull made a brilliant car when the regulations changed, dominated for 4 years, won everything. Everyone really didn't like Sebastian Vettel and Red Bull because they won 4 in a row. And some of those years were not competitive at all. And then Mercedes did the same thing in 2014. And then they've won the last 7. And now everyone's bored of Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton. So they've been clamouring for change. They've wanted change. They've wanted, more equality. They've wanted more different types of races. They want someone else to be done. They want a title battle. They want all this and that. And then they finally get it. And it lasts 7 races. So far anyway, obviously it's not doom and gloom yet. Last 7 races. And then the last 4 races, it's been one-way traffic from Red Bull. And one of the measures they brought in, pretty much to combat Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton, was this idea of a sprint race. Now, the British Grand Prix that's coming up, I'll skip forward and then I'll tell you about last week. So the British Grand Prix this weekend is going to be the first where they introduce a sprint qualifying format. So normally, Friday, they've got practice session 1, practice session 2. Nice and simple. Saturday morning, they do another final of practice, and then they do the qualifying. And then obviously, everyone tries their fastest lap, and then that sets the grid for Sunday. You go off and do your race. So this weekend, they've changed it. So what they're going to do, they're going to do practice on Friday, normally. Then they're going to do what's called the original qualifying session. So they're going to go, on Friday afternoon, they're going to go qualifying session, as you normally would, except this will set the grid for what's called a sprint qualifying session, which will happen on Saturday, in place of kind of the normal qualifying session. It's all a bit confusing, but just try and stick with me. Friday, practice session, and a qualifying session. That qualifying session on the Friday will set the grid for Saturday's sprint qualifying. So wake up on Saturday, you're going to do a little practice again, as you normally do. And then so Saturday sprint qualifying is basically going to be a half-hour race. So you've already qualified on the Friday. You've got a half-hour little mini race, which is about 17 laps. So there's no need for pit stops, no need for strategy. Just blast, as fast as you can. And then that finishing order. So when that race finishes, whatever the order is, then that'll set the race for that's at the grid for the actual race. Hopefully you followed this far. So the actual race on Sunday, rather than just doing your fastest lap, is actually going to be based on a mini race. So that's going to benefit the good teams. Well, it's not going to benefit the good teams. If anything, it will just really disadvantage the bad teams. Because over a, half-hour race, 17 laps, the teams at the back will be at the back still, and anyone who's not got good race pace will really go backwards. So if anything, it just adds some jeopardy to the good teams, because the good teams who were going to get on pole anyway, I mean, it's going to be Red Bull and Mercedes on the front row probably anyway. All that means is if one of the good teams crashes or runs wide or makes a mistake, they're going to end up at the back, which does balance things out a little bit, I suppose. I'm trying to work out who actually benefits. I can't think, right off the top of my head, I can't think of anyone that it really benefits. Like in terms of actual race pace and technical, innovation, because if all things being well, you're going to get exactly the same grid as you would if you're qualifying, because the best teams are going to be at the front anyway. But the only thing that it does give you a chance, it does give everybody a chance to crash. So it gives Hamilton, Verstappen, Bottas, all of these guys can crash on turn one and end up at the back for the actual race. So I guess it's more like a fan thing. It's not actually a sport benefiting thing at all, because like I said, in terms of whoever can go around the lap the quickest should be on pole. But it's going to be interesting. Obviously it's going to be full capacity fans, as we all know. 140,000, 150, something like that over the weekend. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to watch, because you're going to get a little race on Saturday, which is fun. And then those guys the winner of that race gets the actual pole position credited to them, and they get 3 points, which could be interesting, because that's an easy way to claw back some points, I guess, if you're Lewis Hamilton. So yeah, skipping back now. So that's the British Grand Prix. That's coming up. That's the only real difference that's gonna be in play. Obviously, last year they had 2 races at the British Grand Prix. One of them, everyone's tyre blew out. So Hamilton's tyre blew out. Bottas, Sainz, loads of these other guys. So Bottas's tyre blew out the second to last lap. He ended up getting screwed by it. He had to pit, lost loads of positions. Hamilton's tyre blew on the last lap, and he was limping home on that last lap, while Verstappen was chasing him down, and I think he ended up winning by about 5 or 6 seconds. But that was a very dramatic last race, and then Verstappen won the second race in Britain. So listen, the way Red Bull are going, the British Grand Prix could be very, very interesting. So yeah, going back to last week, if I can even remember last week, the Austrian Grand Prix, copy and paste. That's your headline. It was copy and paste as from last week. Verstappen dominated from practice to qualifying. Qualifying was close, because Lando Norris and McLaren was 1 corner away from getting on pole, which is quite amazing, given the McLaren managed to match the Red Bull on pace and managed to beat Bottas and Hamilton on just pure pace. That was very interesting. So Lando Norris, if he wasn't already, is slowly becoming an elite driver, because I think he's starting to believe himself now. He's got a good car. He's destroying his teammate Daniel Ricciardo, who was seen as one of the best drivers on the grid. And it's looking good for him. The race itself, Verstappen's literally had 2 entire races of almost no overtakes, no jeopardy whatsoever. The only bit of jeopardy was the safety car at the beginning of the race on the weekend. He just sped off in distance. The car is comfortably the best car. Didn't help that Norris was second and Perez was third, so they held up Hamilton for a bit, and Bottas was behind them as well, so Bottas was kind of struggling. Hamilton got damage, so he couldn't close the gap to Verstappen, but they had a whole pit stop. Red Bull had a whole pit stop back to Mercedes. So, Hamilton was running second comfortably, and then got some damage. Norris overtook him, and Bottas they let Bottas overtake Hamilton, so that Norris wouldn't overtake them both. So Mercedes played a goodish strategy there, to not let Norris kind of run away with it. But in the end, easy win for Verstappen. Easy, more points, more points for them. It is slowly, if it wasn't already, I think the last 4 or 5 races, I mean, apart from the DNF in Baku, where Verstappen's tyre just blew up for no reason, I think the tyre race would actually be over if that didn't happen. But then again, if Hamilton didn't tap the brake button, he'd have got 25 points. So that's how close it is at the minute. But Formula One is it's still going to be very interesting, because I think Mercedes are going to start throwing a lot of stuff at their car now, engineering and development wise, because I think it's hard to know, because I want to know when. I want someone to come out, because Toto Wolff, the Mercedes top guy, he's kind of made some comments about focusing on next year, but I don't know if they actually are, or if they're trying to bait Red Bull into stopping this year. Nobody's actually come out and said, we have stopped development on this car, and we don't know for a fact. We don't know if they're bluffing or not. So Red Bull apparently are still going on this year's car, and it sounds like Mercedes. Well, it sounds and looks like Mercedes aren't. I guess the proof's in the timer. Like Mercedes are getting smashed all of a sudden by Red Bull. By Verstappen. So it's getting to a point. I think we'll see in the next couple. I did say, I think before this triple header, because I've had 3 races in a row, which is quite tough. I mean, before the triple header, you're gonna have to win 1 or 2 of these. Britain, and then we've got Hungary, and then Belgium. I mean, if Mercedes don't win any of those, it's game, set, match. But Hamilton likes Hungary. Mercedes should be better in Belgium, and the British Grand Prix. Hamilton obviously is the record holder there. He's won. I think he's won 8 Grand Prix there, so he knows how to win. These next 3 tracks, he knows how to win. So if he doesn't, then the title race will be over, and we've got a new champion. So yeah, lot going on at the minute. So obviously the British Grand Prix this weekend is going to be very interesting. There's a couple of the penalties last week. Again, the narratives. When you watch Formula 1 all the time, you understand the narratives and why people say what they want. So there's a lot of penalties last weekend as well. It's kind of started from Hamilton and Alex Albon last year. They had it twice actually, where one of them Hamilton just drove into Albon. That was different. But one of the other race in Austria actually last year, Albon tried to go around the outside of Hamilton at this particular corner, and there was contact, and Hamilton got a penalty for it. This last weekend, 3 separate incidents at that same corner, and everyone who tried to go around the outside got pushed onto the gravel, and the guy on the inside got the penalty. So it's kind of, there's 7 penalties in all on the weekend. Perez got 2 of them, which kind of helped Mercedes in terms of the constructors. So he ended up finishing 5th in the race. Bottas ended up coming 2nd. I think it depends on who's been wronged, because I mean all through the broadcast on the weekend they were saying, it's really harsh on Perez, he's got nowhere to go. But when it was Hamilton and Albon was going around the outside, it was Hamilton's fault. So it's a strange one in terms of penalties. I think it does depend on who's committing the offence as to how outraged they are. But they're all quite silly penalties, because when you go around the outside, you should probably expect to get run wide. So none of them should be penalties for me, but it is what it is. So that's Formula 1. It's balanced on a knife edge. We'll see what happens going forward. We're kind of poised on that one. Euro 2020, obviously. What a week! What a week! Obviously, as you know, we got to what I think last time we spoke was the end. So just before, after I put the last video out, that night was the France game and the Spain game. And up until that point, I remember saying it was kind of not boring, but it was a bit pedestrian at the time. That night proved, or that afternoon or evening proved that's not the case anymore. Obviously, Spain and Croatia putting up 8 goals. France going 3-1 up with 10 minutes to go, and then losing on penalties. So favourites went out. England beat Germany, as we all know. Epic performance. That was one of the first times in a long time you've had a big crowd. fever pitch. Everyone's going nuts. And England just played very, very well in a big game. And so did Harry Kane and Raheem Sterling, of course. Ukraine got a win over Sweden in extra time. Set up the quarterfinals. Belgium, pre-tournament favourites, got beat by Italy. I mean, Italy, extremely impressive how they dealt with Belgium, given that Belgium basically the favourites for the tournament. Italy were very, very impressive. Spain managed to get Switzerland on penalties. Spain are a weird one. We'll see, because Spain are going to play Italy tonight, actually. That Italy should win that, even though Spinazzola, their left back, is injured. So basically their best player of the tournament, Italy's best player of the tournament. I guess we'll see. I mean, Spain, they could run up a score if they put all these chances away, because they've got, Morata's a bit like Timo Werner, both Chelsea boys, unsurprisingly. They just can't finish their chances. But if they do, they make a lot of chances. They've got good ball position. So we'll see. That's going to be an interesting game. That could go either way. Italy are a scary prospect, I would say. It's Italy looking like, a very interesting team. So I guess moving on, Denmark, again, another impressive team, going from cardiac arrest again, I keep mentioning this, cardiac arrest to losing that game to Finland, and now suddenly they're in semi-finals, looking solid. So they will play, obviously, England, after England demolished Ukraine in Rome. That game particularly was quite interesting because you had, obviously, the first time England had to travel. So England played all the games at Wembley, at home, all that kind of stuff. Then the first time they actually had to get on a plane and go somewhere, play some actual tournament football, they showed up and then they got to use their squad, which I guess was a benefit of having so many good players in the team. You can throw on Bellingham and you can start Sancho, you can have all these guys. It was great. Great to flex the squad a little bit and not have to rely on, the same 11 or the same sort of core of players. So, listen, England-Denmark tomorrow at Wembley. I can't remember what the capacity is. I think it's half or 40,000. It's a lot. So the atmosphere is going to be insane. So yeah, you'd hope England can get through that. But it's going to be a good game. It's going to be a good game. Denmark are a good team for sure. And it could be Italy in the final or Spain if we get there. So this week, hold tight London, because this week could be an interesting one, especially if we get to the final on Sunday. Flipping over across the pond, across many ponds, Copa America has been rumbling on. Lionel Messi is doing his thing. I think he really wants this one. He really wants this one. Top goal scorer, probably unsurprisingly. You've got Ronaldo and Messi at their ages now, still top goal scorers of their tournaments, which is just, there's no more words at this point for what them two are doing. Brazil are in the final. They won overnight against Peru. Remember I mentioned four in each group. There's only 5 in the group, but almost everyone gets through. Three of Brazil's group got through, and only Argentina got through from their group. So into the semi-finals, that is, of course. So Argentina playing tonight against Colombia, who aren't what they were. So it's all set up for a Brazil-Argentina final, which is, if you think of Brazil, Argentina, Italy, England, that's like headline stuff. So, that's going to be extremely good game to watch. There's a lot of good finals on this weekend, to be fair. So that's going to be very entertaining. Wimbledon has been pretty entertaining. The last couple of days. As I wrote this episode up, had lots of names, and then they all went out in the space of an afternoon. So some of the big guys. Tsitsipas, number 3 seed, who just lost the French Open to Djokovic in 5 sets. He was one of the pre-tournament favourites. He went out the first round. There wasn't too many Serena Williams went out first round. She got injured, so that wasn't a shock. It's more she got injured. And then yesterday, some of the names that were kind of still rumbling on. So Coco Gauff, 17-year-old, she went out. She obviously broke onto the scene when she was 15, got to the 4th round a couple of years ago. And Raducanu, young British girl, she hadn't dropped a set all the way up until last night's game. And then we don't know. She retired injured or hurt after being down a set and 3-love. She looked like she was struggling. I haven't got a clue. I don't think they've said yet what was wrong with her. It looked like more of a breathing issue, or something like that. But it's literally I'd just be speculating. But it didn't look good anyway. She was in a bad way. So, but British tennis looking good anyway. She's kind of like a new someone to gravitate towards for British tennis. Sebastian Korda, obviously brother of the two Korda sisters in golf, Nelly Korda's just won a major. Two of the best female female golfers. So there's a good little trio of athletes starting to run the scene a little bit. Sebastian Korda lost in 5 sets. Really good game. Lost 10-8 in the 5th set. So he was another guy to kind of sort of watch, but the big guys are still in. A lot of on the women's side, most of the top seeds are out. The number 1 seed's still there, but only 4 of the top 10 I think are left, if they're even still in now. So that kind of shows you there's no kind of dominance in women's tennis. A lot of the top seeds, they go out in the early rounds. It's not that big a shock. Whereas in the men's side, most of them stay in. Some of them went out last night. Rublev went out. Berrettini's still in there. I'm liking the look of him. He's looking quite impressive. He won the warm-up tournament. So Berrettini's looking good. Djokovic and Federer cruising through. Federer's beaten Cameron Norrie on the way, young Brit. Djokovic lost the first set to Jack Draper in the first round, and then he still managed to get through. But Djokovic is Djokovic. He's looking like he's got gears and gears and gears to go. So he's going to be obviously like massively impressive, and we'll see how those guys get on. The NBA playoffs. Well, we're now at the finals. Suns Bucks. It's going to start tonight. Giannis is touch and go for this series. If he doesn't play, the Suns in 5. Suns are going to win in 5, maybe. If he does play, it could be interesting. But I just think that if Giannis is injured, right, even if he's like 50-50 or 60%, 70%, I think the Suns are going to win. You need 100% fit. You need your best player 100% fit if you're going to beat the Phoenix Suns, because the Phoenix Suns are flying. To be honest, they kind of got through the Clippers. Who, again, I think injuries is something I want to talk about. Injuries seems to be playing a big part, because obviously LeBron got injured and AD got injured in the warm-up to the playoffs. Kawhi Leonard has got ruled out of the playoffs with an injury. Trae Young kind of derailed that Bucks-Hawks series, because the Bucks obviously beat the Hawks 4-2. Trae Young got injured before a game, so he was out of the game completely. And then Giannis got injured in that very game, and then the Bucks managed to lose. So they played a whole game. Neither superstar was in the game, and that kind of did swing it a little bit towards the Hawks. Well, if Giannis wasn't able to play, and then Trae Young missed another game, and obviously Giannis hasn't returned yet. And then Trae Young came back in the deciding game, Game 6, but he wasn't 100%, so they end up getting beat. Chris Paul missed a couple games through COVID. The backup players are I say backup players. Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday are not backup players, but obviously compared to the 2-time MVP, I guess you would be. But those players are standing up big for the Bucks. Like I said, I think the Suns will have too much because all their players are healthy. If Giannis can come back 100%, maybe in game 2 or 3, we'll see. But I think the Phoenix Suns are gonna take some beating for sure, with or without Giannis. Because Giannis hyperextended his knee. It looked like he was done, completely done. Looked like an ACL tear. Looked like he was absolutely finished. But he just hyperextension, no structural damage. So he could be back, but it's not looking particularly good for him to be back at anything like his best, because he needs to be 100% fit. The kind of basketball he plays. So we'll see. We'll see. I mean, neither of them are they're both chasing a championship. The Suns have only been the last time the Suns were in the finals, they lost to the three-peat Chicago Bulls. So the first of MJ's 2 three-peats. That was the last time they were in the NBA Finals. The Bucks won. This is back when prime Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was playing. So neither of these two are like established championship teams. But they could be going forward. I mean, the Bucks, this is kind of third time lucky in a way, because they had 2 years when they were strong. They had the MVP of the league and they didn't quite get there. And now this is like their third opportunity to get there. The Suns have come from nowhere. They signed Chris Paul. Ayton and Devin Booker showed up big time, and suddenly they're in the finals looking like the favourites. They're 6-point favourites according to American sports books now. So I think that's probably because Giannis isn't in there, but we move. I think they'll be too strong. It's given Giannis' current situation and how I don't think he's going to get back to 100% fitness. I think Suns in 5. I mean, if Giannis comes back in game 2, I'll say Suns in 6. I think they'll win maybe 1 or 2 of those games in Milwaukee, but then I think it's not going to go. It won't go. I don't think it'll go to 7. Given the injury status at this minute in time, so that's all to look forward to. I think 3 of the games are going to be this weekend, or 3 of the games will be this week. So next time we speak, it will be game 4, I expect. Tour de France, I mentioned briefly last week because I hadn't watched much of it. I didn't know who was who. Did some research, watched a couple of the stages, and with sports, I think a lot of the time, with casual sports anyway, I tend to gravitate towards the best players or best teams, just to see how the progression of the pinnacle of that sport's going. Because if you're a casual, if you're a casual football fan, you don't know anything about football. You're not gonna follow Leyton Orient. You're gonna be really casual football fans, certainly from overseas. They'll follow PSG, Man United, Real Madrid, the big teams, just because they're most exciting, they bring the most money, they're most interesting. So that's kind of my casual approach to other sports, because I like seeing the best, the best of that particular sport. So there's a kid called Tadej Pogačar, Slovenian guy, 22 years old, who seems to be, he's defending Tour de France champion, and watching him ride and seeing how the commentators talk about him is quite exciting to watch, because I think with any sports you want like a superstar. And anytime there's a superstar, you like watching them do their thing, you like watching them dominate. And obviously, given the Tour de France is, sketchy is an understatement. Bad past for doping and cheating and all sorts. It's kind of, I think with that sport particularly, it's hard to sort of trust or get excited about anybody, because the sport was built on, all the blood doping, all the Lance Armstrong stuff, and before EPO. And it's just kind of, you've been cheated on so many times with the Tour de France. There's no way you're gonna throw yourself into, there's a new kid coming up, he's really good. I think you wait until everything settles and you hope everyone's clean. But this kid's exciting. Watch a couple of the stages. Apart from Pogačar, Mark Cavendish, 36-year-old, he's edging towards the all-time record of stage wins at Tour de France. Now, what I found interesting when I checked out the list, you've got the other 3 around him, right? Eddie Merckx, 5-time Tour de France champion, overall champion. Bernard Hinault, 5-time Tour de France champion. And Mark Cavendish, he's won the points classification, which means he's the sprinter, so not the overall, just the sprint stages. He's managed to win them on the 3 mains, the Vuelta España, Giro d'Italia, and Tour de France. He's won the points classifications for those. So he's been the best sprinter, like time trial, sprint stages, the ones that nothing mountainous, no mountains involved, and he won't win the overall yellow jersey. So the guys around him have all won. The greatest of all time. Merckx and Hino, they're considered the two greatest of all time anyway. So he's in there with the greatest cyclists of all time, period. And he's obviously, I guess, the greatest sprinter of all time. So he very emotional, for in terms of the scenes and all the riders, and he was very emotional because he's come from so many crashes, big illnesses, and he's come back and now he's edging towards. He's 2 behind the all-time record. So he can maybe get those 2. Who knows? If he ends up the most winningest, to use an American term, most winningest Tour de France rider of all time, that would be something, given where he's come from. So yeah, Pogačar is an exciting talent. His main rival, pre-race main rival, Primož Roglič, abandoned the race because I think he had an early crash in the race, and the Olympics is coming up, and it's kind of almost not a warm up, but if they're not going to win the Tour de France, there's no point in riding the Tour de France, which is an interesting sort of way of looking at it. Kind of just be like, okay, cool, I'll use it as a quick practice, and then dip off and go do the Olympics, which is what the original leader was doing after this week. So he decided, no, I'm gonna call it a week there. I've got the Olympic Games in 3 weeks, 2 weeks. I'm gonna go back and prepare for that. So obviously going all out in the Tour de France and then trying to go win the Olympic Games back to back is not what you want at all. So Tour de France is quite exciting because you've got a young guy who's drawing a lot of attention. There's some interest in it. He's obviously defending champion. He's obviously could get 2. He can get 2 Tour de France's by the age of 23, and then I guess you can kick on from there and towards the all-time records. Chris Froome's in the race. Geraint Thomas is in the race as well, but they're not challenging for the overall. Finally, almost finally, been a long one so far. The UFC is this weekend. The UFC. Conor McGregor, Dustin Poirier 3. Obviously, it's 1 apiece between those two. Conor TKO'd Dustin in the first round in 2014. And then Dustin leg kick and TKO'd Conor in January this year. So it's 1-1. It's the way I see it, it's definitely a legacy. I feel like it's a legacy-defining fight for Conor because the legacy will be decided. If he wins this fight, his legacy goes from when he beat Chad Mendes, or maybe even a bit earlier, all the way to today. And it includes ups and downs, Diaz, Khabib, losing to Dustin, getting it back. His legacy will be yay big. If he loses, I feel like his legacy will basically be ended by Khabib, because he came back and beat Donald Cerrone, which doesn't really count. Then he obviously got knocked out by Dustin. Now, if he gets knocked out again, that means he's lost 3 out of 4, and he's lost back-to-back for the first time in his career. I feel like his legacy will be. He won't get back to the elite, the top. Fighting for the title, fighting the elite guys. If he loses this, he'll probably do boxing. He might even fight Jake Paul. That's a whole nother discussion. He might go fight Nate Diaz a third time. That would be interesting because that is 1-1 between those two. That'd be a money fight, but that's not like a competition-based fight. It wouldn't get you excited in terms of winning belts or being the elite of the sport. So Dustin, it's a strange one because Conor needs this one, really. If he loses, it's a hit. The competitive side's going to be over. Dustin, I feel like beating Conor the first time, that was his belt, because at the time Khabib was messing around with coming or going. That first fight between Conor, the second fight, but the fight earlier this year, should have been for the belt because Khabib was messing around. So if that was for the belt, Dustin would be the champion now. So obviously in the interim, Charles Oliveira is the champion, and Dustin Poirier decided not to fight for the belt against Oliveira. He wanted to fight Conor for the money. So that tells you, obviously, Dustin isn't driven by winning the belt. He doesn't need to win the belt with all his might. If he beats Conor, he kind of has to fight, unless he wants to retire off that, which I guess he can. But then the amount of wins he's got against the top guys, it'd be silly for him to retire, especially when he can win the actual overall undisputed title whereas he held obviously the interim title before when he beat Holloway. So for Dustin Poirier, it's an interesting one. It'd be interesting to see what he does, because after he beat Conor, he was kind of just like not that bothered. He wasn't talking about winning the belt. He was like, I just want to see how it goes. I don't really enjoy it too much. And beating Conor McGregor was his title. So we will see how both of them sort of approach this fight. Concerned's not really the word. I'd say I'm more wary of how Conor's coming into it. Hopefully he takes this one with a bit more of a competitive edge, because I feel like the first fight, it was all very respectful. They're both fathers, blah blah blah. You know, he didn't look like he was fired up. He looked fired up, you know, in the weigh-ins, but I didn't feel that energy from him throughout the week. And then he did well on the feet. The first fight, it was competitive, and then Dustin's leg kicks really wore him down and probably surprised him. So that's obviously all they've been training. Obviously McGregor has been training leg kicks since. So hopefully that doesn't take him by surprise, and hopefully this time Conor can take him out. I say hopefully. I think hopefully for the sport. I think Dustin winning the first one was good for him, and I think people didn't want Conor to take a shortcut to the title. But I feel like if Conor can get knocked out for the first time in his career against an excellent opponent, and then come back and win the trilogy fight in Vegas, that would be good for the sport. That'd be a good narrative for the sport. I think if he could come back and get the win back over Dustin, which he did, the Nate Diaz fights he had, he got destroyed in the first fight, really. He came back and won a 5-round war, which is something we never thought he could do, cardio-wise, and you know, the durability of Nate Diaz. So he won a 5-round decision against Diaz when we didn't think he was going to. I think Diaz was the favourite going into that second fight, and Dustin is the favourite going into this fight as well. So, you know, there's some similarities there. But for me, my humble opinion, this is a career-defining, it's a legacy-defining fight. Legacy better than more than career, because he can still fight on. His career's not over if he loses, but the legacy is going to be set based on what Conor can do in this fight. For me, I just don't think he can. You know, he can build his legacy back. It just take too many fights, and I don't think Conor wants to win that many fights. If he loses today, he has to win like 2 or 3 more fights to get back to where he is now. Whereas if he wins this fight now, he's fighting for the title next later on in the year. And that's going to be a mega fight. If he fights Charles Oliveira in October for the lightweight title, that'd be incredible. And he could win that. He could win that. It's not like Khabib where he's got slim to no chance. He can beat Oliveira, because obviously Chandler almost knocked out Oliveira. Had him two or three good punches away from beating him. So Oliveira's a better fighter all round. His jiu-jitsu is better. His stand-up is very good. But Conor can beat him. Oliveira should beat him, but Conor can. So this fight is the one for Conor this weekend. On the undercard, Gilbert Burns is fighting Wonderboy Thompson. That's kind of a welterweight eliminator fight. I think if Burns wins that, he's in the conversation to fight Kamaru Usman again, when Usman either gets through, whether it's Edwards or Usman. The welterweight title was kind of log jammed a bit. It depends on who Usman decides to fight, whether he fights Leon Edwards, who he should fight, or Colby Covington, who has probably earned it, but Colby Covington's been sat out chilling, waiting for this title shot. So there's 2 guys who should be getting that next. The winner of Burns Wonderboy adds himself to that list probably after the second defence, if Kamaru Usman gets that far. And then Junior McGregor, even though he's not that junior, he's 26, Sean O'Malley. His opponent dropped out, so he's fighting kind of like a stand-in. So he should be winning that fight. But Sean O'Malley, after, should be fighting a top 5, top 10 guy. And then, you know, his hype will kind of go on, because he's got that kind of star quality that everyone liked from McGregor. So, listen, UFC's, I mean, this it's going to be an amazing fight, amazing weekend. I mean, yeah, there's so much going on this weekend. It is one that you earmark months in advance. When you realise the McGregor fight was this weekend, you knew the Euros was going to happen. It's insane. It's insane how much is going on. Next week, obviously, the Open, the British Open in golf. I'll do a little video, RE that. and obviously the British Grand Prix will be then as well. So much going on. Tour de France is going to wrap on. Wimbledon will be getting towards its end, if not finishing. Copa America, Euros, NBA, it's all kicking off. And even in the other sports, I found myself watching Superbikes on the weekend. The long-time champion Jonathan Rea, which people don't talk about too much. British guys from Northern Ireland, but he's a British driver, racer. Absolutely dominated that. He crashed out, so his championship lead is gone. Like, even little sports that I just found myself watching, there's storylines everywhere. So what I'm going to try and do, I'm going to try and bring as many as possible with some insight. I don't want to try and be Sky Sports News and just tell you, oh, this guy won that round. I want to kind of give some insight, like I tried to do anyway, with Pogacar, and why I like Tour de France and what I'm interested in. So that's the kind of insight I'm trying to give. But listen, appreciate it once again. If you've got this far, give yourself a pat on the back. And yeah, we're gonna get plenty more. We're gonna get another good video coming out this week about the athletics and all these world records that are going on. So obviously we've got the Olympic Games coming up in 2 weeks, so it don't stop. But I appreciate it once again. Like this one if you can, subscribe if you're not already, and I'll see you very soon.